Are you looking for inspiring conversations about faith, film, and life? You're in the right place. Here's the host who knows the right questions to ask, Father Edward Looney.
Hey everybody, it's Father Edward. Grateful to bring you another conversation today. I'm always so honored by the guests that take time out of their life and their day to come on the show to have a little conversation, and then to be able to share that with all of you through audio and through video over on YouTube as well. And so there's a lot of different branches of Catholicism. You know, we talk about Roman Catholicism, with allegiance to the Holy Father in Rome, of course. But there's Eastern Catholics, so Eastern Catholicism. Then there's different branches, you know, so there's like the Ruthenian or the Romanian or the Maronite rites of Catholicism. And so today I'm going to be speaking with Petra Nakhoul, who is a Maronite Catholic. And I think that they have a lot, or she has a lot that she can share about what a Maronite Catholic is, what their Mass or their liturgy, divine liturgy, is like, and to share something about their saints as well. So I think this will be an informative conversation, kind of helping us to realize the universality of our Catholic faith. So thanks so much, Petra, for joining me today.
Thank you, Father, for having me. Appreciate it.
And so I got connected with you because we share a mutual friend in Anna Nuzzo. And so you're actually in the United States. You're from Australia. And so you have come to America for a few weeks to spend time with Anna, to go around to different places as well. And so I'm grateful for the connection and to be able to speak today. And when I heard you were in town, I'm like, well, Australia, I don't know what the time difference is, but at least in America, we could do an interview on American time, and it'd be a little easier for you or me or both. So,
Definitely.
but maybe just, you know, to start out with, you know, what is a Maronite Catholic? So, well, what does that even mean?
So we are, I would say, we're pretty much the same as everybody else, but in saying same, we have a different flavor. I'd like to look at it like this, as like the little flower once said, Saint Teresa of Lisieux. It's a garden filled with different roses, flowers, and botanicals, and they all have their beautiful scent, and they all come in, and the bigger picture, it looks beautiful, it smells beautiful, it is beautiful. So the Maronite rite, I would say, is a very distinct flavor, if I can call it that. We come from Saint Maron, 300s, Syria, and it developed from there. So Saint Maron, though, lived outdoors, lived as a hermit, you know, under the weather, and really worked so hard with the people in prayer. We weren't called Maronites then. It wasn't until after he passed away. People were known by the man. So we were named after a man. So everybody else is, you know, named after a place, a city, an area. So I think we're the only rite in church history that's actually named after a man. But he converted a lot of pagan temples, helped a lot of people, a lot of healings. Saint Theodoret was a historian and bishop who actually wrote about him, and that's how we know more about him over time. Church was heavily persecuted, and we then had to, part of that, you know, kind of prove allegiance to Rome, to the Holy Father, just so that they know we are Catholic and we're not, you know, fighting against them or pagans or anything like that. So we it took a lot to get to where we are today, but the church, what it looks like today, is absolutely beautiful. I mean, the head of our church is obviously the Pope, who's the head of the Universal Church. But for us, we have the Patriarch, and the Patriarch is on par for us with the Pope pretty much. So we have the Pope, who is, sorry, the patriarch is also cardinal at Rome, and he has, obviously his residence is in Lebanon. He came out last year actually to visit us in Australia. We had an international congress, and it was absolutely beautiful. So he came out. We had the 50th Jubilee year for the Maronites officially being in Australia. And so it was a major celebration of the patriarch, the major general superiors, religious. They all came out for that. We had a series of conferences throughout the time that we were there. And then we had a final mass, which accrued more than 8,000 people attended this mass. It was absolutely beautiful with the patriarch at the end of that. And we did it at Homebush. So I'm not sure if you know, the Sydney Olympic Park is where obviously they had Olympics in the year 2000. And so we were able to hire out the tennis arena for that. It was quite spectacular. So the Maronite Church is quite vibrant. It is quite alive. A lot of people. And I find that wherever I go around the world, there are Maronite Catholics. And the Maronite Catholics are just pretty much everywhere. Like it's beautiful to see that. The reason why we have such a diaspora is because it was quite we've had so many wars throughout history in Lebanon, and it's just called the people. The people decided, it was just too much. They needed to make some sort of a living, as with many other, peoples and ethnic cultures and, countries and that. So left home, to find a better place. And so that's why you find such a widespread diaspora of Maronite Catholics all around the world. So in the US, you have quite the bit here. We have 2 bishops governing in the US as well, or overlooking. And you also have the Bishop of Australia, New Zealand, and Oceania, which I fall under. Quite the number of Maronite Catholics there. We have, I think our largest diaspora is in Brazil, the Latin Americas as well. And actually they're all over the world, let's just say that. So it's quite beautiful to see that, though. Wherever you go to visit, you'll find a Maronite church.
Yeah, I just looked up in Wisconsin where the nearest Maronite church was to me, and it looks like it's Milwaukee. It looks like it's a mission, it's the St. Charbel mission, it says, and it's under the eparchy. That's like a diocese, and the eparchy of Los Angeles. So just a little research that I did to see, you were talking about them being everywhere. I'm like, well, I don't know if there's any in the greater Green Bay area, but the Milwaukee metro, that's where they're at.
Yes, I'm going to visit there in the next couple of days. So I'm looking forward to that. I was telling Anna, I actually miss the Maronite Mass. I mean, I love the Roman Catholic Mass, the Latin Rite Mass, because I also grew up in that. And I studied it, and I studied it extensively. I actually studied it more than I have the Maronite liturgy, which we call the Corbono, which means offering. So for me, it's really special. It's deep. It's intimate. The Mass is absolutely intimate. When we go into the Mass and the way we start, and just entering into the Mass with the presider, you feel like you're really entering into heaven. And that's what it's essentially supposed to be. And that's essentially what it is. So we know that when we enter into the church, when the priest is processing and everybody's processing with him, or those who are standing are present, we know that heaven becomes present on the altar at that moment. And so it's such a special thing. It's very beautiful. For me, any Mass I walk into, I know Christ is present. And so I don't have this thing where, I like this more or that more, or it's, I'm Maronite Catholic, no, I only have to go to a Maronite Mass. It's not like that at all. I love my Maronite faith, my Maronite, like the Mass, I love it. But I do go to all masses. But I did, because I've been here now for almost 3 weeks. I really miss the Maronite Mass. I mean, I live right next door to my church, so you can imagine.
Sure.
All
So
there all
what? So is it more like the divine liturgy of like John Chrysostom, or what's distinct about it? Is it the chants that are used? How would you describe it as a variance from kind of what most people that might be listening,
Mm,
who have
okay.
a familiarity with the ordinary form of the Latin rite?
Okay, so it's heavily based on chant, but we don't chant the whole way through, like the entire Mass. Okay. Some of the Eastern rites do that. We don't. When saying that, though, it is a dialogue that occurs between us and the priest who is in persona Christi. And so you'll find in our Mass that the whole time we're calling on God. So the priest will do that for us. Then there's a response, there's a prayer. So we seek forgiveness. We seek all these beautiful different things that we're asking God, healing, mercy, in growing in all these different and beautiful things. And so through our worship, we're recognizing what God has done for us from the beginning of time to the present, knowing also then the promise of the hope of the resurrection. In that resurrection, then we are, through the Mass, we are also working towards our salvation. The Mass helps us then go out at the dismissal, the same as Latin Rite, to go then and bring the good news to the world. So there is a lot of music, a lot of chant. It's very beautiful. It's heavily imbued with music, the Mass. Incense. We use a lot of incense, and it's, for us, it's such a special part of that as well. It has a lot of meaning. So when you're talking about St. John Chrysostom, that's an anaphora. We have so many anaphoras, but at the present, we've only got several in our Book of Offering, but I know that they, at the moment, are working on that. So they're working on editing a few different things in there, minor changes, before they make a new release of that. When, I do not know. So can't be talking about that, and I'm not an expert in that area. But the Maronite Mass, if I can say, is just, I think I couldn't, it's not a matter of comparison. So, and that's so important that people know that we don't compare the Mass, because I think each and every Mass rite is very beautiful in its own unique way. And it always draws what's meant to draw us back into the heart of God, back into the heart of the Eucharist communion with God and then with one another. So when I talk about that, I don't want people feeling also like it sounding like it's better than. It's not. I think it is very beautiful, and I love it. And I do hope that, at some point people are able to experience the fullness of the Maronite rite at one stage or the other, throughout their lives. It's a very beautiful Mass. And I remember Anna going to her first one in Sydney, and she was just in awe. Like, she would have just arrived. It was earlier this year, and I invited her and I said, Anna, would you like to come to a Maronite Mass? And she said, I'd love to. I said, okay, let's do this. So I took her to the choir loft and I said, Anna, you ready for this? She's like, yes. She goes, am I going to sing? I said, only if you choose to. So she came in, and although she didn't know the Mass and didn't know our hymns, because she's musically talented, she was able to harmonize those parts of the Mass and the hymns that we sung. And people were just in awe, because she was in awe of the music as well, because the music is reverent, and it also is very particular to the day, like to the Mass that we're celebrating. So it could be, the Feast of Pentecost, for example. It could be the Feast of the Transfiguration. And so it's very particular. And all the music has been created for each of the masses. So the opening prayer, the opening chant would be that. So the opening hymn, the welcoming, the dismissal is all appropriate to the day. So you don't, very rare that you walk in and you find that it does not make sense, like where the music is. So we do have leniency in some regard to other hymns that we can bring in. And we do bring in a lot of Latin Rite hymns as well, especially when it's the English Mass, because for the English Masses, a lot of our parishes are still in the process of translating from the Arabic to the English, the original music that we have, and songs and hymns. So we do use the Latin Rite Catholic hymns in that. And we all know so many and we all love them. So it's not different, if I can say. It's not distinct as such where we have to pull out and only stick to Maronite. No. When we come to hymns, we know the purpose of a hymn. And so the purpose of a hymn is the same across board, because like I said, we're Catholic and universal. So it's across board when it comes to worship or what it means today. So, but our, if I could just go a little bit back, a little into the history of it though. So the ritual of the Holy Mass though, it's according to the Antiochian Maronite Catholic Church that's celebrated today. So we go back all the way to the time of St. Peter in Antioch. So there's no break. And we're the only Eastern Rite church, Eastern Rite, that never split from Rome. We've always been one from St. Peter. So from the moment of the institution of the church, we've never walked away. We've always been one. So, and that's as well what is so unique to the Maronite Rite as well. So it has its origins in the ancient rites of the Universal Apostolic Church, which was, we know, established many centuries ago. And it's just by Jesus, obviously, and the apostles. And so since the establishment of the church, by Jesus, we have many diverse forms of Christian worship, that had developed through that. And in the same period, we have the rites and customs that were then observed by the Maronites and then have progressed and flowered into the form of what we see in the Maronite Church on God's altar today. So, yeah, it's beautiful. Consequently, though, through periodic reforms in the liturgy, since the days of early Christianity, the church attempted to give its faithful a deeper comprehension, and that's what I love, a deeper comprehension and appreciation of the spiritual meaning of the Mass. And so then in addition, they've always tried to also give us a better understanding of the spiritual benefits, those who partake in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And that is something, we can truly, if we do choose to see through the eyes of faith as well, we see that through all the rites, all of our Masses. And so this is heavily imbued though in us and in our Mass. And so to be called a Maronite Catholic, for the longest time, people thought that you're only Lebanese. Like if you're Maronite, you're Lebanese. If you're Lebanese, you're only Maronite Catholic. People didn't realize that, hang on a minute, because it was just so heavily imbued into one another. It was so intricate and intimate that people thought it was one and the same thing. So it is such a way of life for us. The Maronite, I call it, just call it the Maronite way for now, but it is truly such a way of life for us. And it is living the gospel as we're called to, as a universal church. We are called to live that gospel daily. And so we do that in our Maronite Rite as well, and through it. And it becomes, for us, it's so much easier because the Mass is all of that for us. and it teaches us as well. So it's, yeah, can you tell I love it so much? I find it so profound. And, I'm glad that after Vatican II, they were able to reinstate the Maronite Mass properly. And, well, they had, I remember regulations that were issued Vatican II, after Vatican II, 1965. They pertained specifically to the Eastern Church. And I remember it was part of the ecumenical decrees at the time. And so they reformed the liturgy at the time under one of our cardinal patriarchs. After that was when we see all the different amendments that came through to what we now have and what we now see as the reform since that time. But that was something they're still working on through that reform. So the Mass has its different parts, and essentially it begins right in the beginning, obviously, with the cross. So the standard is lifted by the acolyte who comes in with it, or the servers. But it's always traced back. I think I'm just trying to make the picture make sense to you, because I'm so heavily imbued in it. I'm just trying to maybe pull it apart in my mind to help you have a better understanding. So let's just go back a little bit to the liturgy, the liturgical works. So if I can go back to that, we have two very rich traditions, okay, if we're talking back early church, and those of which are Edessa and Antioch. So I mentioned earlier we're of the Antiochian Maronite Syriac, right? So for us, our liturgical works came from St. Ephrem and St. James of Sarug. They were the first Christian converts to the church at the time. And they also included the earliest Jewish Christians. So the liturgy was strongly influenced by the worldview of the Bible of the time. And that was the worldview. You know what I'm trying to say? You know where I'm coming from with this. So it was, as one of the oldest churches, established churches, it developed its then prayer forms that were being influenced by Greek thought. So we know it was the Greek world at the time. So our Maronite liturgy today still has many hymns and prayers from St. Ephrem and St. from James of Sarug. The Anaphora of the Apostles, also known as St. Peter's Anaphora. I know we have Peter 3, and the Syriac word is Sharad, which the Maronite shares in common. The Maronites all share in common with the Church of Edessa, which is still the oldest anaphora in the Catholic Church today. It's still found in an adapted form in the anaphora. It's in the signing of the chalice on Great Friday. So, we call it Great Friday, you call it Good Friday. Early morning, we do a rite. It's such a beautiful rite that happens about 5 or 6 a.m. It depends on the priest and the parish. And the signing of that chalice will occur. It's almost like, if I could say this, it's almost like a service of the word, right? Without consecrating the host. So what is then left from Holy Thursday, so all the Eucharist that is left from then, is given to the people at the signing of the chalice at that rite. And it happens only that time of year, this specific rite. It is so deep, and it's really beautiful the way it talks about the entire life's journey of Christ, and then the mystery of redemption and just his saving grace. The way he enters, it really brings the person into this communion and union with God at that point, to see what's happened on that Great Friday, to pull us out of the depths of that death and that agony into, then from the tomb, into the hope of the resurrection that morning. It's just remarkable. We don't touch on, we don't delve into the resurrection, but we know that Christ rose, so we speak about that. So there's hope, that there's always that hope that lives there. So all of that has come from then, so early church. So, I mean, if you can imagine it this way, we have, Christ is with his apostles. He's the promised, Messiah. They're waiting for this king to come and save them. And we have Our Lady, we have the apostles, Saint Mary Magdalene, we have the women that we know, they're all in the Gospels. Christ, for them, once he dies, what happens? It's almost like they lose hope. Something happens. Not all of them. We know the different characters in that Bible, what their roles all were. But you look at the bigger picture, and it's almost like there was this death, and there goes their king, and they go into hiding. You see, at this point, it's where they experienced, right? So they experienced in the first resurrection, the first sign of hope. And so for us, at every one of our masses in the Maronite rite, okay, or any rite that we then celebrate, always goes back to the original hope of that resurrection, as if you were there then and then, that moment. So that is what we live for. That is how we pray. This is how we celebrate our Mass, our Corbono. And rightfully so. It's an offering, and we offer ourselves to God. And it's not in return of, it's because he's made that one offering, one complete offering. And in that, we then offer ourselves back in him, with him, and through him. It's in the Mass. So
it's interesting, because a lot of times, in the Roman Rite, we'll colloquially refer to it as the Eucharist, so that's what we receive, but we kind of call the Mass the Eucharistic celebration or something like that. So you're using the word like Corbana, right? Or offering?
Corbono. Yeah.
And so that's the maybe the term that you use, that we would use for Eucharist. You're saying offering. And so it's just interesting just to notice kind of the language and just the nuances between the two, obviously, as you've been sharing.
Yeah, that's why, that's why I say the Maronite rite is very rich. The liturgy is very, very, very rich, and it's completely drawn back and taken from Old Testament. If you're looking at Leviticus and you're looking at the Mass unfold in front of you, if you're reading Leviticus and you understand truly what the liturgy is about, you can see it completely unfold. Leviticus, and then you see it in our Mass. When you come to the Maronite rite and you open up Leviticus and you're reading it, you'll be like, whoa, it's just everything that we have, even all the symbolism, even all the little things that we put in place. You're looking back, it's like as if you were there then during that time, except for it's in obviously the form of, that we have it now, and it's based on Christ himself.
You've mentioned a few different names. So, of course, and this is actually something that really mesmerizes me. And actually, I mean, by the time this airs, I will have preached a homily on it. But it's my intention this next weekend, as we record this, that I want to preach about kind of our ancestors in the faith, and just thinking of the saints as they worshiped and as they, went to Mass and as they prayed. And that's something I think about often. And well, one that I go to often is St. John Vianney, for example. That St. John Vianney was a parish priest, just like I am. He lived in the little village of Ars. I live in a little town or city of Shawano, a little bigger than ours. But, I just think about the Curie of Ars, and, well, he would have went and prayed in his church. The Curie of Ars, he put on his vestments and got ready for mass. And like, I just think about that ancestor in the faith and how they went through the very same motions that I'm going through. And,
Yeah.
how he ministered to his people and how I wish to minister as well. And so, like, that's something that I've often, in my own little meditation, just like wondered, like, how did St. John Vianney pray after Mass, after he celebrated the Mass or whatever, right? So,
Mhm.
so you've mentioned a few different names that I won't try to repeat, but yeah. So your history, the Maronite Rite has saints as well, and so you rely on this kind of historical tradition then, and the fact that these people, tracing all your roots back to Antioch, for example, that like you can trace it and you can follow the ancestry. And so then, you have your saints. Like, I mentioned John Vianney. Let's mention one of the popular saints of the Maronite Rite, Saint Charbel. So someone could look to Saint Charbel and kind of do that tracing as I maybe did, or relating to as I did for Saint John Vianney. So Saint Charbel participating in this rite, living and breathing it, praying in it. Tell us a little bit about Saint Charbel.
Oh, he's the best.
Yeah, and
So,
he's obviously on the Roman calendar. Well, his feast day was just a little while ago, but there is a great devotion, to Saint Charbel. Like, I know of a prayer group in Appleton, Wisconsin, that prays like devotions in honor of or whatever to Saint Charbel, like every Tuesday or some random day of the week or month or whatever. So Saint Charbel has a reputation as, kind of one of those saints that maybe some people aren't familiar with him that are listening, but I bet there are some, because there is a familiarity with his name a little bit. So,
yeah. Yeah, so Saint Charbel is one of the more known Maronite Catholic saints. He was a hermit and lost his father at a young age. He decided he wanted to join the monastery, and he went as a teenager. He went to join the monastery. His uncle, so his mum's brother, was a monk, and so on one of his visits one day, he says to him, his uncle says to him, would you like to come and join me in the monastery? And Charbel says to him, I'd love to. He had this great devotion to Our Lady from when he was a young boy. So he used to go and borrow incense, candles, and coal to go and, sing, to go just show his devotion to Our Lady. And we have this very famous Maronite hymn called Mother of God, Ya Allah. And they would often find him praying inside a cave, sitting
hmm.
there, praying the rosary and chanting that hymn to Our Lady. So he did that from when he was very young. And so as time went on and he was growing, he was not interested in the world. He was not interested in women. He was not interested in anything but God. He just wanted God. He had this complete detachment from earthly things. And so he, when his uncle did come, he sought permission from his parents. So his mum had remarried. And so he sought permission and made his way to the monastery. They gave him the name Charbel. His name was Yusuf Makhlouf, that means Joseph Makhlouf. And they changed the name from, and I think if I remember correctly, Charbel, Saint Charbel, was a Roman soldier who was martyred for the faith. And I think it was in our region, somewhere along that Mediterranean region, very close to Lebanon, or in Lebanon. So they gave him that name and he took it on. And so he lived quite humbly. People didn't even know he existed. He would work in the fields. He worked in the vineyards. He lived off bread, stale bread, water, and if he was able to get, some sort of an onion, a brown onion, he would have a piece with that. He ate once a day. He slept on the ground, on concrete ground, and it was very cold. I mean, if you go visit Lebanon now, you'll see where he slept. You're like, how do you do it? Like, it's freezing. It's high up in the mountains where he was at, and I used a log for his pillow. And he would, if he needed warmth underneath him, he used the hair shirt and put that under him. So he was, very penitential, very prayerful, always had his head down and never looked up. He when they'd go out into the fields to work, so all the brothers and the fathers would go out together. And when they'd go out into the fields to work, they'd also work with all the laborers of the town. So all the men that were there would all come in and work this land, right? They all needed food. It was a time of great famine and a lot of problems, a lot of wars, a lot of everything. And so people would stick together and help each other out. So they would often forget him at lunch and then realize, oh no, where's Charbel? He didn't eat today. And they'd look up and they'd find him high up on a mountain, hidden somewhere, arms wide open in prayer, in ecstasy, total ecstasy. By the time the end of the day came, he would miss his meal, he'd go to prayer, and then go to sleep. So there came a time where, now it's every period of time, okay? A hermit, so a man would be chosen, okay, from one of the priests to go and offer his life up as a hermit in the hermitage that was just across the way from where the monastery was, but it's high up in the mountain. You've got to cross a deep valley to get back up into this hermitage. So Saint Charbel's desire, his greatest desire, was to become that hermit. And so it came at a time where the hermit that was there had just passed away. And so the superior calls the fathers and the brothers, and the seminarians, so all who were present, and he calls them together and he says, it's time to pray for another hermit. Let's pray to the Holy Spirit to guide us for the person that he wishes to have on that mountain. And so they did all get into prayer for him. They got into prayer to see who it was that was going to be chosen. And then at that time that was happening, Saint Charbel goes into his room, come back really late. And he asked two of the brothers, they just happened to be walking past, and he asked them, he says, would you please fill my lamp with oil? Now, they didn't have candles at the time, things like that. They used the oil lamps, and they would light, they had a flint, and then they would light that. And he used it to pray. And they had curfew, okay? So they had time where they had to be in bed, obviously, with religious life. They've got times where they're up all the times where they sleep, times where they pray, everything like that. So there was communal prayer. And there was also the time where they had private prayer, like personal time for prayer, so, and recollection. And so that evening, he'd come back late from work. They forgot him. And so he had to make his way back in the dark. He comes in, and that's why he then asked the brothers, could you? So he misses his meal, and he goes to the brothers, asked them. The brothers went, yeah, sure. And they wanted to play a joke on him. They wanted to prank him. They thought it was funny to prank Charbel because they're kind of making a mockery of him in a sense because, oh, he's so holy, oh, he's this and that. So they took the lamp, moved it away completely from him, and he'd gone into his cell. They filled the lamp with water, and they brought it to him. And so they stood there at the door. He took it, he thanked them, he blessed them, he praised God, took the lamp, and set it in his prayer space. Now, Charbel has no idea what just happened. And by the way, those lamps, you cannot see their contents. The way they were made, like they were like this terracotta, very similar to like a terracotta, like an earthen vessel. And so they would fill them up, and it had a very small opening. So at the top where they would fill it up, and then at the tip where the flame was. Okay, so it almost like, you know, the genie in the lamp. Look at that kind of style of a lamp thing. That's pretty much what it was. So he comes in and he gets his lighter and the matches, whatever it was, and he lights it, and the thing just illumines. Now, it lit up normally in front of him, so he sees a normal light just kind of turn on, right? Naturally, you know, you light it, it turns on. But what they saw, so these brothers stayed looking. There was like certain little holes. I don't know what they're called. I've forgotten their names. It's not a keyhole. There were very specific openings in a door that they had to the cells for religious. So they were peeking in. And what they saw, though, was a bright light just illuminate out of that room. And they jumped out of their wits, and they're like, this can't be. They know that the light was a supernatural light that happened at that point, but they also know a miracle had just occurred, because you can't light water. I mean, water doesn't get on fire, right? So they were absolutely freaking out. They go into this frenzy, and the superior comes running. Why are you shouting? This is like quite late at night. And it's like, why are you okay? Like, is everything okay? And then like they go, Father, and then like, Charbel. It's like, is Charbel okay? And he's running to Charbel to check in on him. And they're like, forgive us. We're so sorry. We just played a prank on him, yada, yada, yada. And look what happened. And they told him, we put water in the lamp, but he doesn't know. The superior looks at him and goes, go to your rooms. So he sends him away. He walks in, he knocks. Now, Charbel was very obedient to the superior. He was obedient. He knew the superior, any word that came out of his mouth was the word of God. Okay? That's how he treated his superior. So Charbel is in prayer. He's in ecstasy. So he doesn't hear the knock, but he hears the superior's voice calling him. And as soon as he hears him call him, he's like, he gets up and he goes, is everything okay? He's a Father Superior, what can I do for you? And then his superior says to him, Charbel, would you please turn off the lamp for me? And he goes, yes. So he blows it out. And the superior puts his fingers in there and licks it, and he knows it's water. He tastes it, it's water. He doesn't say anything to Charbel. Charbel still has no idea what's happening. And he looks at him and says to him, Charbel, relight the lamp for me. And he relights the lamp. So he relights the lamp, and the same thing happens. The superior was like, he knew it was God himself that did that. That was a miracle that just happened at the hands of God. So, and that was the sign for the superior to appoint then Charbel to the hermitage. So it was just incredible. A lot of things that just, I mean, he's done so many miracles. I mean, while he was living, he cured so many sick people. And it's just marvelous. So after he passed away, though, there was a real big light that illuminated out of his tomb.
That's one of the aspects of his story that I read that just really amazed me. And I'm a guy that loves to visit the graves of holy people. So like, I'm very blessed, of course, living in Wisconsin. I can go an hour away and I can pray at the grave of a visionary, Adele Bryce, who saw the Blessed Virgin back in 1859. An hour from where I live, there's a blessed of the church buried, Blessed James Miller. I love just going, traveling and praying at tombs. I led a pilgrimage recently to Bishop Berga's grave, Venerable Berga, Blessed Solanus Casey. So suffice to say, I love praying at tombs. I love praying there. I believe they're places of grace that I believe one time when I prayed at the grave of one of these priests that has a cause for sainthood, that in a sense, like a portion of his spirit was given to me, kind of like that, the story of the scriptures, right? Like it was just a very profound experience at the tomb. And so when I read that about Saint Charbel, I'm like, I love this. And to me, like using that story of Saint Charbel and the light emanating from his tomb, I think is the compelling explanation to people. Like people will say to me, like, why do you go pray at all these tombs of saints or holy people? But I think the story of Saint Charbel tells them and can emphasize why, So he is a great miracle worker. So I know that there's stories like of a leg or
A complete limb.
a complete limb growing back. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's one. There's we were talking on the phone the other day, and it was this bilocation of not bilocation, this apparition of Saint Charbel, that someone wanted to pray for his intercession, and Saint Charbel appeared, and then basically they didn't realize it at the time, and then Saint Charbel prayed with them, blessed them, and said, well, your requests will be heard. So there's a picture on the internet, you can find it. So
yeah, it's fairly recent, that one.
Yeah, there's just wonderful stories about Saint Charbel. So if you're looking for a holy intercessor, maybe Saint Charbel of the Maronite Rite is one of those people that you can add to your litany of saints, and maybe to learn a little more about, to allow his life to inspire you to deeper prayer and contemplation, to really believe in the miraculous. So there's so much more we could talk about, but I think we're running low on time. But I think we've touched the surface of what is a Maronite Catholic, what is your Mass like, and who are some of your saints. So we answered 3 questions, so that's pretty good. And yeah, I hope you enjoy your time here in the States. And my understanding, and this is going to probably come out after the Feast of the Assumption in the Western Church, or the Dormition in the Eastern Rites, but you're going to go to some fairly large Maronite celebration for the Dormition of Mary, right?
Yes, I am. I'm going to Ohio, North Jackson. So they have the National Shrine of Our Lady of Lebanon there. They're celebrating their 59th year this year. And they normally do a 3-day pilgrimage every year there. So all the bishops will be there, and everybody normally go to that event. And I remember experiencing it, thousands of people at a time, like any given day. It's absolutely beautiful what they do there. Remarkable. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I've never been. Of course, I would love to go, probably. I love shrines to Our Lady. Now, you mentioned Our Lady of Lebanon, and maybe you've been to Washington, D.C., but in the National Basilica, that is one of the most beautiful little chapels that they have to Our Lady of Lebanon in the crypt there. So well done to the Maronite Rite for building such a beautiful little chapel to Our Lady in Our Lady's Basilica.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I did get the chance to go visit it several years ago. It's very beautiful. Yeah, thank God that we had the opportunity to do that.
Well, wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time, for sharing your experience as a Maronite Catholic. And yeah, very happy to have this conversation today.
Thank you, Father. It was a pleasure. God bless you.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. And don't forget to stay up to date with what Father Edward is doing by following him on Facebook, X, or Instagram at the handle @FrEdwardLooney. Thanks for listening, and please join Father Edward again next time for another inspiring conversation.